All right, so we're doing 3-minute holds today, and we'll start with the banana pose. So come onto your back, move your hips to the right edge of the mat. And it's really quite simple. You just move your legs and arms over to the left, pretty much as far as you can go. And remember to try and keep this hip down. And then as usual, we want to feel a stretch in the right waist and ribs. And we want to feel safe, and we want to feel not comfortable, but comfortable enough to be able to hold this position. So again, if I were to say, oh, I'm so comfortable here, that would be a lie. This is not the most comfortable position for me to be in, but I do like the stretch. Some people do, some people don't. Just depends. So, you know, some people like the way stretching feels. Some people feel stretching is painful in certain areas. So again, whether you like this or not, generally speaking, a stretch, if it's done properly, is therapeutic. So it's beneficial for us. And that's the important thing to understand. Like the same with like working out or doing certain activities. We may like the sensations of working out. We may not like the sensations of working out. But if we're working within a certain parameter, then whether we like or dislike the sensations, we're getting benefit, right? So that's the key to understand, because there's so many things as human beings that we can do that in the moment we're doing them don't feel particularly good, but longer term, they are going to give us benefit. And I'll say this, for the most part, that's how yoga is. Many of the most beneficial things we could do in yoga are not necessarily going to feel great at the moment that we're doing them. And this is why, in my opinion, education is so key. Because if you're just expecting people to do yoga based on, oh, it feels so good as I'm doing it, then you're going to really limit the number of people that are doing yoga, because not everyone's going to feel like, oh, this is the most amazing thing in this moment. If you can educate people that, yeah, maybe it doesn't feel so great right now, but if you stick with it, you do enough of it regularly enough, it really can transform your life in a big way. And I know this personally because it's happened to me, and I know it for other people too, because I teach, you know, I've taught so many people over the years. So I know it's not just me, and I know that it can really work for anybody if they're willing to put in the effort. All right, I have just a few seconds left here. All right, let's go ahead and switch sides. This is the banana pose. And this is called lateral flexion. So again, today's class, a great way to think about today's class is articulating the spine. So articulating is what we call when you're moving a joint. That's a technical term for moving a joint. Now, in the case of your spine, we're not talking about one joint. I think your spine has something like 76 joints or something like that. There's just an insane number of joints. Most vertebrae, where the vertebrae meet, there are generally 3 joints. You have 2 facets and a spinous process. So you have 3 joints there. Now, joints can cause a lot of problems when they get stuck or fixated, when they get damaged. Then that can cause all kinds of problems with the musculature around the joints. So one of the ways we help keep joints healthy is moving them often enough and through what's called their full range of motion. Okay? So what is a full range of motion? Every joint has a limit how far it can go. Now, this is a really actually key important point that I'd love for you guys to really grok today. So maybe if you don't take anything else away from the class today, this is something that you take with you. Our joints have a natural range of motion, all of us. And here's the key, it's different for everybody. So one of the worst things you could do is take a yoga class, look at your neighbor, and she's maybe doing some extreme version of a pose, and then think to yourself, oh, okay, she must do a lot of yoga. If I do that much yoga, I'll be able to do what she does. That is a completely incorrect assumption. You have no idea what the range of motion is for your joints in your body, okay? So to look at someone's back bend, and sometimes teachers make this mistake, so you need to be a little bit careful. I'm not trying to put anybody down or insult anybody, but I've just seen it enough in yoga where a teacher thinks because they worked hard on a pose and were able to eventually do the pose, they will then teach everyone who's in their class, just keep working hard. You'll be able to do it just like me. But what that teacher may not realize is everyone's range of motion is inherently different. So you're really giving a false promise to some people because some people will not have the range of motion that the teacher has. All right, let's unwind. Just rebound for a few seconds and relax and feel the sensations. Okay, let's bring those legs in, give them a little squeeze, shake it out. And then we'll do the cattail next. So we'll take the left leg straight up, drop it to the right, prop the head up on the hand and elbow, take the legs apart, bend the knee, reach back, grab the foot. Okay, so you can keep your head in your hand. You can straighten and bend the front leg. You can bring it higher or lower. And additionally, we want to explore the twist today. So leaning back. So the hips stay where they are, but we can lean back and get a deeper twist. I'm not going to do that necessarily because I'm teaching. All right, so again, teaching yoga is not doing yoga. I hope at this point you all know that. So I try and demo these classes because, again, when you're online, you can't look at your neighbor. You can't, there's no context in the room. So early days in the pandemic, I didn't used to teach yoga online so much, but early days in the pandemic, I figured out, okay, I just need to basically do the class with everybody. But this is not my yoga practice. So my yoga practice is separate. So I'm mostly just trying to show you what to do because you don't have anyone else to look at. So leaning back, laying back while leaving your hips where they are. But again, I'm basically trying to teach you. So I'm going to stay upright so I can face you and speak to the camera more. So range of motion, it's different for everybody. And in a perfect world, we would take every single one of our joints through their full range of motion, probably daily, just every single day. We would twist our spine, we would bend it forward, back, left, right, as far as it could go. And ideally, we'd probably do this more than just once a day. And we would do it in a yang way, so we would do it actively, like back and forth, back and forth. And then we would also do it static, like we're doing now, which is like yin style. So that's a perfect world, and none of us live in a perfect world. But if we did that, what we'd find is, as we aged, we would have little we'd most likely have little to no loss in our mobility, in our joints. Our joints would stay really, really healthy, really strong. They would stay free of pain. That's assuming we don't overdo it. Okay, so you can go too far in the opposite direction, just FYI. I always like to emphasize that because sometimes people will think, okay, well, moving my joints is good, so I'm just going to overdo that, right? They think more is always better. Remember this, that with pretty much everything, there is a bell curve, a bell-type curve. So most of us are not doing enough of the things that would be good for us. Most of us. Let's switch sides. Okay, so generalizing, your average American, if she begins moving more, her health, her overall health will improve within reason. So again, I know people who have done too much yoga. I know people who have done too much CrossFit. I know people who've played too much pickleball and tennis. I know people who have run too much. So these are all things that people can develop almost a fanatical, obsessive, addictive behavior. And again, remember, I included yoga in that group. Okay, so don't feel like I'm picking on your favorite activity. I'm not. There are just certain things, and without education, again, people might be doing too much of this thing because they feel really good when they do it. So they're not even thinking about what I'm talking about. They're just, this feels good, I'm going to do more of it. So this happens in yoga. It happens in spirituality, where people are, it's what I call self-medicating. They are depressed, or they are anxious, or they are trying to feel better. They find something that makes them feel better, and they start doing more and more and more and more of it. But the trouble is, at a certain point, your body just can't do more. But it's not necessarily your body that you're doing it for. You're doing it because maybe your heart hurts, right? Maybe you've been depressed, and you start doing yoga and the depression lifts. And the more yoga you do, the better you feel emotionally. But at a certain point, you start having pain in your shoulder, or you start having pain in your back. But because you're afraid of losing that emotional upliftment, for lack of a better word, you just continue battering your body, right? And again, this happens not just in yoga, CrossFit, running, sports. I know somebody who way overdoes it with sports because she calls that her happy place. But, she's like wearing a brace on her wrist, and, she's kind of battered up and has had other problems from overdoing her happy place, because she wasn't happy. So she would escape to the one thing that made her happy, which was this type of sport or exercise, okay? So I just need to put that out there for those of you that need to hear it. Let's go ahead and come on back onto the back. So balance, 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 balance. For the vast majority of people, you would benefit by moving more. Okay, so I just addressed the outliers, the people that are maybe going to move too much, or are moving too much, or doing too much of one specific thing. But those are outliers. Those are more rare. Your average American can benefit by moving more and more often and in more variety of ways. Okay, so from here, let's just give things a little squeeze, shake it out. That was our twist. And now we do a back bend. The easiest way to get into this is just roll onto your belly. And then prop yourself up on the elbows. That's the Sphinx. Okay, so as a back bend, we can go deeper by straightening our arms. And we want to feel a little bit of compression back here. Head held up, drop forward, drop back, shoulders oppressed or relaxed, okay? So movement, really, really valuable. Moving our joints helps keep them healthy and strong. Now, I talked about range of motion, so I want to go back to speaking a little bit about that. Range of motion is determined by a few factors. So the one that your average person knows about, and usually this is the only one your average person knows about, is muscle tension. So oftentimes when I meet people, they find out I teach yoga, they say, I can't do yoga, my muscles are too tight. That's their explanation. First of all, if your muscles are tight, you need yoga more than the person who's flexible. Sorry. You may not look very good doing it. It may not feel very easy or very good, but if you have tight muscles, then you need yoga more than the pretzel girl who could put both legs behind her head. I'm sorry. That's just the way that it is. So unfortunately, the yoga community has sent a message, I don't think intentionally, but the message they're sending through Instagram and social media and all, is you need to be super flexible to do yoga. That's the point of yoga. And if you're not, don't even show up. So this is why a lot of men don't show up for yoga, I suspect, one of the reasons. Because in general, women have more of a chemical called elastin, which makes their joints more flexible. Okay, it's just in your blood. So if you're a woman, generally you're producing more of this chemical in your blood, and it makes your joints more flexible. So ladies don't necessarily think that, oh, I must be so much healthier than that dude, or I must stretch so much more, or I must take much better care of myself because look, he's so inflexible. It's really biological. He may take really good care of himself, and yet he may still lose in a flexibility contest because he just genetically is not designed to have as much flexibility in his joints. Most of that has to do with childbirth. So usually when a woman is pregnant, she has more elastin, even more in her blood. So ironically, I've taught yoga to women who are pregnant, and they can do postures that they can't do when they're not pregnant. So you might think, well, I'm pregnant, I can't do as much. Well, some ladies actually find that they can do more because of the extra elastin. Okay, so unfortunately, because of that message, guys show up, they look at the woman next to them, and she's like way deeper into a pose than he is. And I think a lot of men are somewhat competitive minded, and so they feel like, ooh, I'm losing here. I don't think this is for me. All right, let's go ahead and come on out of that. Come on down. And then we'll roll onto our back. We're not breaking just yet. Again, we want to move the spine forward and back. So hands under hips, legs up, and hinge up to seated. Okay? So soles of the feet together, we're coming forward and down. Notice feet are out. Support forehead, forearms, knees as necessary, okay? So again, it's an unfortunate thing because honestly, your average man could probably get more health benefits from yoga than your average woman. I'm generalizing here, but generally what you see is many more women are doing yoga than men. So again, lack of education, kind of social stereotypes, what people feel they're good at. So to some degree, this is a generalization, so I don't want you to take this too far, but to some degree, you should think about what you're not good at in terms of movement, and you should do more of that. That's not what most people do. Most people, oh, I'm good at this, I'll do more of it, because we like praise. Most people do. So if someone says, ooh, you're really good at that, we think, okay, I'm good at this, I'm going to do it. this is part of the problem with yoga teachers in general, is most yoga teachers are people who like moving, they're good at moving, they're flexible. So a lot of times they have no clue about the experience of your average person taking a yoga class and what they're going through and what their experience is like. Again, this is why a teacher might say, well, if I can do it, you can do it. I just worked really hard at this and I'm able to do it. So you just need to work hard and you'll be able to do it. But what that teacher may not realize is when they took their first yoga class, the teacher might have come over to them and been like, wow, you have a really great practice. How long have you been doing this? And they might be like, well, this is my first class. Oh, wow, you have a beautiful practice. You should think about becoming a teacher. Wow, that's so great. Okay? So again, my father once told me that in order to teach math, you should have to fail math. And what he was saying was the person who's good at math won't understand or sympathize with why someone else is struggling to learn. Because for them, it's easy. It's simple. Look, 1 + 1 = 2. Why don't you get it? What's wrong with you? Right? That's their thinking. Simple. It's easy. How could you not understand this? Whereas the person who failed math and had to overcome the obstacles, they will understand the struggle that someone is going through to understand maybe even a very simple concept. So I believe this is true of yoga teachers and other professionals teaching. It really should often be the person who was the worst, who had to overcome the most adversity, who actually teaches, because then they can help people who are experiencing adversity. Let's unwind onto our back. Because again, if I've not experienced adversity, then for me, I'm just going to be like, what's the problem? Just do it. What's wrong with you, right? It's so easy. If I could do it, anybody can do it, right? Kind of attitude. But again, a lot of times that's just a lack of understanding of what a person's actually going through. All right, so this completes the first round, you might say. We have moved our spine left and right. We've twisted it both directions, and we've gone forward and back. Yeah. So now what we'd like to do is sort of ramp that up. Do it again, but perhaps a little more intense. So let's bring our legs in, give them a squeeze, and then make your way up to seated like me. And we do the dragonfly. So dragonfly is potentially a deeper version of the banana, okay? So our legs are wide and straight, although you can bend the legs. So if you need to, you can bend them. But we'll fold over the left leg, and we want to feel stretch in our right waist and ribs. So if this is enough, great. If not, then you'll roll or stack the right shoulder over the left shoulder, okay? So we're just getting into that waist and potentially the ribs. And you might feel it here as well, which is why you might want to bend that leg. Just depends on where you're holding tension and the shape of your body, okay? So range of motion, ideally we would take our joints through their full range of motion, pretty much all of them every day. Again, potentially in a yin way, in a yang way, and that would really help keep the joints in optimal health. I think few of us have the time and energy to do that. But if we did, I think our joints would stay really, really healthy, all other things being equal. So if we have a good diet, we are not abusing our bodies in other ways, then our joints would stay in optimal health. What tends to happen to us is probably by the time we're teenagers, we start moving a lot less. If you watch little children, a lot of times, young children, they're just so full of energy. They're just like running around and spazzing out, and climbing things and rolling and doing all kinds of things that makes adults really nervous. And, you know, oftentimes the adults are like, hey, just sit down, be quiet, be still. But children generally just want to move. But by the time we're a teenager, a lot of times, either just because we don't feel like it or because we've been told so many times to stop moving around so much, we stop moving. And I think it's at that time many of us start losing our range of motion without realizing it. Because modern life doesn't require a lot of range of motion. If you're not taking yoga regularly, if you're not doing martial arts, if you're not doing dance, ballet, gymnastics, if you're not doing something that requires flexibility, if you're not on the cheer squad, then you're probably not going to notice it, because modern life requires you to sit at a computer, sit in a car, sit at a dining room table, sit on a couch, walk from the car to your front door, walk from your car to the grocery store. That none of these things require a lot of range of motion. Okay? Most of their joints are being used a fraction of what they could be used. Let's switch sides. Okay, so this is a really key point here, that modern life has reduced our need to use our joints, so we don't. This is again where, from my perspective, education is really, really important. This is why I share these talks and information with you, is I hope that with understanding education, you will begin to make different choices, different than the average person, because the average person in our country is not very healthy, unfortunately. There's a difference between not being sick, not being on medication, not having a surgery, not being in the hospital, and actually being healthy. Okay, so this is a key thing we need to understand, that if you're like, well, I'm not on any medications, I haven't had a surgery, my doctor says my health is okay. The standards that we have set in the West for what we call health, which generally means not in the hospital, not sick, not on drugs. And a lot of times we consider that healthy too, right? A lot of times a doctor will put us on all kinds of medications, and it's, well, for your age, this is normal, so we're going to give you this drug. Again, it's not the way humans have lived for most of their existence. So why do we need to have these surgeries and these medications, all this stuff, when there are people who live a much more primitive lifestyle than us who don't need those things? One misconception that I used to have was that before modern technology and science, people died very young. So that is true of the medieval European cultures. So we can hear these things that, oh, well, in Europe, people used to die at 40 and all this kind of stuff. So many of us assume that science and medicine doubled our lifespan, right? We used to die at 40, but now we die at 80 or above, and that's because of modern science and medicine. But that's a misconception. I read in a book that many tribal peoples who live not on farms, not in medieval cities, but live in nature, as most of us did for most of our existence, they easily live to 80 and beyond. Now, the interesting thing is they live to 80 and beyond without a lot of the health conditions that we have when we get to our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So Peter Attia, again, who wrote the book Outlive, he calls those the lost decades. All right, let's go ahead and come on out of that. Just make your way onto your back, relax. So the lost decade, or decades for Americans, are those years where your joints and your health and your body becomes so decrepit that you can't really do what you enjoy anymore. If you like to garden, your joints hurt too much, you can't garden. If you like to hike, your muscles are too weak to hike. If you like to travel, you can't lift your bag into the overhead bin anymore. So you're afraid to travel. You're afraid to carry your own stuff. A lot of us don't think about this. We think about living to 100 or beyond, and we don't really think about what that would actually look like if we don't have health. So there's a difference between a long life and a healthy life. So this is why some of the people I read, they talk about health span, not lifespan. Because you can have a decade or more where you are alive, but you're basically useless. All the things you love doing, you can no longer do, except watch television, right? It just basically be a vegetable, all right? And I don't think anybody really wants that for themselves. We might end up there, but I don't think anyone's thinking of being that way in old age. They'd rather not be that way. All right, let's go ahead and give everything a counter stretch. So you can hug your legs, and then we will do the twisted roots next, okay? So twisted roots, right over left, and then down to the left side, okay? And we just take a spinal twist. You can play around with the leg and arm and head and neck position. So the key is, my point with sharing this stuff with you is there's a lot we can do to avoid that outcome. So again, if you want to read Peter's book, he's not a yogi. He's not a spiritual guru. He's a hard-nosed doctor. And he has a lot of science in there. He talks a lot about different drugs and tests and things that you can do to try and prolong your health span. Now, it's not the only book I recommend, but it's one book. And again, it's a book from someone who has nothing to do with the kind of yoga spiritual space. He's just talking about changing the way we approach medicine and healthcare in this country. He thinks that we need a new way. So again, he has 4 major killers that kill modern people. I don't know if I can remember all 4 today. It's been a minute since I read the book, but we definitely have heart disease, metabolic syndrome, Alzheimer's and dementia, and cancer. Those are the 4, okay? So what he says is all 4 of those respond well to preventative care, and all 4 of them respond terribly to intervention. So an intervention is, oh, you feel sick, or you have a problem, or look, you've got diabetes, or your test is showing this or that. What he's saying is it's at that point, for most of those 4, too late. You've already gone a decade or more with this problem growing. By the time you become aware of it, it's already too late. Okay, so again, this plugs in very well with the approach that is taken in the ancient healing modalities, where it's mostly about preventative care. So again, the main thrust of my point this morning is that there's a lot you can do to prevent those negative outcomes. The thing is, it requires you to be proactive rather than reactive. So that requires you to get up, on Fridays and set your alarm and get ready and come to the class, right? Make that a point to do that. On Mondays, set the time aside, even though, again, it may not feel very good or very easy, or you might struggle, just making that commitment. Getting outside every day and walking for 30 minutes, even though you may not feel like it. It might be hot, it might be cold, you might sweat. All right, let's go ahead and switch sides. So the point, to say it very, very simply, is that there's a lot you can do. So what I'm actually trying to do is just really empower you and motivate you And these are all things that most of you have heard me say some version of this in the past before, but these are all things I didn't know about when I started this journey. So that's why I assume most people don't. You might be up to date on all of this stuff. You might know more than me, but I'm just sharing what I've learned and what I think is interesting. And again, I'm trying to, in a sense, motivate my former self. It's like I'm talking to my old self, who would have been not inclined to move or stretch or to do what was beneficial for his long-term health because he just didn't know any better. So again, a lot of this is just, it's trying to encourage and inspire you and really empower you, let you know how much power you have over the way that you age and the types of things that happen to you. So again, back to range of motion. All of us have a natural range of motion in our joints. By the time we get to our teens, 20s, that has been reduced because we haven't been moving. So muscular tension, connective tissue tension, fascial tension, and also restrictions in the joint itself prevent full range of motion. So many of us, we can't move the joint as far as it was designed to move, let's say. So the joint is now dysfunctional, meaning it doesn't function optimally. That's for most of us, for many of us, that's maybe a lot of our joints in our body, including the joints in the spine. They don't move as far as they were designed to move. So in a class like this one, or really any of the classes, what we're, one goal, you might say, is to try and restore that range of motion to the optimal amount, not to go beyond that. And so that ties back in what I was saying at the beginning, which is we each have our own optimal range of motion. You should not compare yourself to someone else and say, I need to do what she's doing, because her optimal range of motion may be completely different than yours. Okay? So I wish more people understood and knew this. We cannot, and we should not try and change our optimal range of motion. We should only try and achieve our optimal range of motion, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and come on out of that. Give your legs a squeeze. And then when you're ready, make your way up to seated. All right, full saddle. So sitting on your heels, sitting between your heels, sitting on a block. Toes can point back or out to the sides. Knees can be together. Knees can be apart. All right. What we want is minimal stress or strain in knees and feet and ankles. So minimize that. And then what we'd like to feel is a stretch in the front of our thighs or a little bit of compression in our back. So right now, I personally don't feel either. So if you're feeling a lot of stretch here, good, just stay right there. Just stay seated like this. If you don't feel anything here, then you begin lowering back, hands, elbows, bolster, crown of the head, or all the way back on your back until you either feel a stretch here or you feel a little bit of compression in your back. At this point, I feel a little bit of both. Okay. So again, what we'd like to do is through movement, and sometimes vigorous movement, sometimes movement that doesn't feel very good, we would like to restore the optimal range of motion. And the reason for this is use it or lose it. if I don't use my complete range of motion in my joints on a regular basis, so it's not like I go to one yin class and then I'm cured and then I'm done. It's really, again, lifestyle, maintenance. Your body requires maintenance to operate optimally. It requires movement. We all know we require food, right, to survive, to live. But many of us don't realize that we also require a certain amount and certain kinds of movement to maybe not to survive, but to thrive. And I don't know about you, but I don't really want to just survive. I'd like to thrive. I'd like to really enjoy every moment of every day, enjoy my life, feel like life is a gift rather than some chore that I have to deal with every day, right? Oh God, another day. Okay, you know, wouldn't it be better to just feel like, yeah, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm excited about the day. So again, restoring and keeping our optimal range of motion will require regular maintenance. And the good news is you can do that. And it's not that expensive. I post if you can't make these classes, I post them online. As of right now, it's all free. So there really isn't any excuse. I'm not the only one either. So you can find tons of people sharing yoga postures, content, things online for you to do to help improve your health. I know the main thing for many people is time, and I get that because I feel that too. Time can really feel like it's the resource that we have the least of. But when we're sick, when we are not happy, when we are sluggish, we have no energy, when we're depressed or anxious, these things often are showstoppers for us. They can be. So really, is it worth it? In my opinion, it is. It's worth taking the time to really setting some time aside every day for you to maintain the best health that you can. And so few things are going to be as impactful as some of the things that I'm sharing with you here. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and come on out of that. So I've mentioned before, from my point of view, my perspective, it's great if you can make both of these classes, the Monday and the Friday. That's a great start. See if you can start walking for 30 minutes every day. And then if you can, maybe you can increase that to 3 miles, 5 miles every day, somewhere in that range, average. So maybe some days you're walking more, some days you're walking less. Maybe on the days that you take time to do yoga, maybe you skip the walk. Because again, I know we just don't have unlimited time and resources and energy to move. Other things to think about is parking further away from your destination, right? Not fighting for the spot that's right in front of the entrance, but actually looking for a place where you actually can walk some steps, get some steps in, taking the stairs instead of the elevator or the escalator. Just small choices. You can begin to add movement back into your life. And then there's a lot you can go from there, beginning to do resistance training and other things. So again, movement, super vital, super important for health, happiness, for maintenance, and again, something that most of us, if we aren't educated on the value and we don't consciously set the time aside, it's very easy to let it fall by the wayside. But hopefully I'm giving you ammunition, giving you inspiration, information that will help motivate you to make those choices. All right, so you can give your legs a little squeeze. If you want to take a rest, relax for the next few minutes, please do so. It's never a bad idea. But if you need to get on with your day, we've rested between the postures, so that should be enough. I want to thank you all for joining today. Let me know if there are any questions or if I can give you more information about anything we talked about. Otherwise, I'll hope to see you on Monday for the flow class, and hopefully my car will be fixed at that point, or at least I'll know what's going on. So thanks again. Have a good one.